Good morning, America. My name is Timmy Vilgiate, and you are listening to the Colorado Springs Mutual Aid and Solidarity Union. Oh, someone just gave me feedback on the previous video and said I got a little bit rambly. So this is going to be a little bit faster, and I am going to go ahead and give you the news roundup for February 26th, 2021. I have rearranged my studio space just a little bit so you can see my electric bike, which with its milk crate on the back that I use to go get groceries, and also my mug while I drink my coffee. So I put up this news roundup this morning while I was waking up, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to share it with you all right now. So many of you may have heard the Biden administration launched airstrikes in Syria pretty recently, yesterday actually. It was targeting an Iranian-backed militia, targeting facilities that they used. Mary Ellen O'Connor of Notre Dame University Law School argued that they're illegal, saying that the United Nations Charter makes absolutely clear that the use of military force on the territory of a foreign sovereign state is lawful only in response to an armed attack on the defending state for which the target state is responsible. None of those elements is met in this Syria strike. The Syria strike comes against the backdrop of a larger campaign by the Biden administration to renegotiate the JCPOA. The Biden administration has requested that the Iranian government get back in step with the terms of that deal, also called the Iranian nuclear deal, and the Iranian government has requested that the U.S. lift their sanctions. The attack in Syria was nominally in response for an attack on the Erbil International Airport in Kurdistan, and that happened on February 15th. More recently on Monday, this Monday, there was another attack in Baghdad in the Green Zone where the U.S. Embassy is located. And so there appears to be a bit of like a tit for tat going on, questions about the legality of the strike. And generally, it's been taken as a sign to a lot of people around the world that America is kind of continuing to pursue status quo foreign policy. This does seem to have registered in the Iranian press somewhat, but the Iranian press is actually, from what I could tell, expressing some optimism about the prospects of U.S.-Iranian relations because the Biden administration has been distancing themselves from Saudi Arabia, such as with the Jamal Khashoggi report that was just released. They are rescinding the designation of the Houthis as a terror group and pulling support from the Saudis in their war in Yemen. So that is being taken as a positive sign from the Iranian government. The House is set to pass the $1.9 trillion in COVID relief. The Senate parliamentarians have said that it cannot include $15 an hour minimum wage. Bernie Sanders has suggested a plan where it would have some take away tax credits from companies that do not pay their employees at least $15 an hour. This is also going to include the $1,400 stimulus checks. I know a lot of people haven't even received the first $600 stimulus checks. I know it would also be much better to have a UBI in this kind of situation, or just in general. So even with the pandemic notwithstanding, a UBI would be a good policy. But it's also going to include some money to help schools reopen and to help cities and states that have had their budgets impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden is today visiting Texas. He's visiting Houston after the winter storm that left, as I said yesterday, many of my friends without water for up to 3 days and trying to survive in the cold. Two of my friends had actually just moved here. One moved from Mexico City, one moved from Colombia. And in my class yesterday, a lot of them were talking about, they have dealt with water shortages back home. A lot of my friends that are actually from Latin America, but were not necessarily expecting it to be as bad as it was in Texas. So, but Ted Cruz, my wonderful senator, is giving a heroic speech about cancel culture in Florida because he really understands what affects ordinary, hardworking folks, and nothing affects us more than the scourge of cancel culture. So that's happening. In state news, Representative Diane DeGette is introducing legislation that will permanently protect 660,000 acres in 36 mid to low elevation areas in Colorado permanently. So that's normally in Colorado, the areas that receive the most protection are the high elevation areas. Is in part because mountaintops and alpine landscapes are kind of easier to romanticize than some lower elevation landscapes where you have a lot more development. So it's a positive step when we do end up doing these kinds of wilderness protection and codifying environmental protection stuff. This protects them permanently. A lot of these areas that are in this bill had already been receiving protection, and there's some other public lands bills that are in place in this larger package that is going to be presented on the floor today. I believe it's about 6 public lands bills that mainly affect areas in the American West. In local news, there was a bomb scare at Springs Ranch Elementary School in District 49 that prompted a lockout. It was unclear what exactly happened. There was a voicemail that was left for the elementary school, and people were locked out of the building. Eventually, folks were let back in at 8:40 a.m. once it was determined that everyone was safe to go back in. From what I've heard, there's also a lot of snow out there in Colorado, and that actually brings me to my next point. There is going to be 7.8% increase in local gas prices because of the recent deep freeze and what it did to gas prices. So that was from the 13th to the 16th. You had gas prices rise from $2.50 per decatherm, which is the unit that natural gas comes in, to $200 per decatherm. During that deep freeze, just because there was such a shortage of supply. And there was also massive demand for natural gas throughout the rest of the country, including where I am right now in Texas. So that is the increase in local gas prices is being decided by the utility board in order to kind of minimize the impact to consumers of this larger surge in gas prices. And so that's just kind of a thing to keep in mind. I don't know that it's, I appreciate that the utility board is trying to take stress off of consumers, but yeah. So moving a little bit towards international news, the U.S. is going to be selling an F-16 training center and related equipment to Jordan, up to 16 SM-2 missiles to Chile, 517 radio systems to NATO. That's going to be a total of $220 million in sales. It was just approved by the Biden administration. The Biden administration had previously put a pause on arms sales that had been approved during the Trump administration. The final details of those sales, of those $220 million of sales, may change in the long run. So again, as I said in the beginning with our airstrike in Syria, the U.S. military-industrial complex is still as hegemonic as ever. Other international news: the Atlantic Ocean meridional overturning current is at its weakest circulation in the last 1,600 years, according to a recent study. Now, what does that mean? The AMOC is a large kind of circulation pattern in the Atlantic Ocean that includes, you may have heard of the Gulf Stream. So it includes the Gulf Stream and pushes hot water up from the equator to the kind of Arctic areas where it cools down, then brings it back over to Europe. Now what it means when this circulation starts slowing down is Europe is going to start having more extreme weather. That means both extreme snowstorms and extreme heat waves and droughts. The sea levels on the east coast are also likely to rise given the reduction in AMOC circulation. So this is a tipping point in the overall climate crisis that we're going to cross within the next 5 years. So this is the UN has also recently just released a statement saying that our goals that we have been setting of reducing emissions by 50% are going to be completely insufficient for actually meeting the demands of the climate crisis, which require us to move our power grid and our whole lifestyle away from fossil fuels and towards sustainable alternatives. It's not inevitable that actually leads us in a more progressive direction. However, there have been all throughout the global south with a lot of these green energy projects, they've been used as a way to further the expropriation of indigenous land, which has been going on since colonial times. And so the important thing to remember is that just because we change the energy system that is fueling our current economic structures does not necessarily mean that we are going to get that things are going to get better. It's important that we remember the structural factors of capitalism are what drive the climate crisis by promoting overproduction, overconsumption of natural resources, by creating this kind of numbing effect for the global upper classes where they do not notice the effects of climate change, and so they are incentivized to take action at a slower rate than they would be if they were, among the kind of global proletariat. So moving forward, in Nigeria, today there were 317 schoolgirls kidnapped from the Government Girls Science Secondary School in Jangebe, Zamfara, which is in northwestern Nigeria. It's not actually clear if they have ties to jihadist groups like Boko Haram. From what I saw, it may actually just be a criminal organization, but the jihadist groups are also currently trying to expand into those gangs because they've been mainly concentrated in northeastern Nigeria on the border with Chad and Cameroon, a little bit in Niger. So being able to expand the front over into northwestern Nigeria may be it could potentially stabilize that region of Nigeria further. So yesterday I updated you all. I kind of introduced the news that the Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan had said that he was threatened by a coup attempt by the military. In association with the opposition, he called his supporters, 20,000 of them, to rally outside of the Parliament building, and in turn they were met by 10,000 supporters of the opposition. This has a lot to do with with a dispute between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Turkey, who supported Azerbaijan in the war last year, has condemned the coup and urged for democracy and so on in Armenia. Russia, who had helped broker the peace deal, also urged calm and urged all parties to continue abiding by the peace deal. So this seems to be driven by a kind of nationalist uproar over the actions of the prime minister during that war. Going back to South America, I had mentioned yesterday that there are about 500 Haitian refugees stranded at the border between Peru and Brazil. That's in the state of Acre. Looking into that, there's currently a hashtag going on Twitter that you should check out if you're interested in supporting Acre at all. It's called SOS Acre, and they are having a lot more than just the refugee crisis on the border, which, as I mentioned yesterday, the government is responding to by deploying troops to the border. They have had massive flooding. This I'm not mistaken, is the rainy season in the Amazon, and so they've had massive flooding, mudslides. They have had a dengue outbreak in addition to the current COVID-19 pandemic. And the government of Jair Bolsonaro has been very fervent about advocating for agribusiness interests, mining companies over the interests of indigenous people, quilombos and ribeirinhos in the Amazon. So he has essentially let the Amazon get the short end of the stick as far as all of the government resources go. He has they've had oxygen shortages during the COVID-19 outbreak. They have been dealing with overwhelming numbers of patients in their hospitals. Their healthcare system for a long time depended a lot on Cuban doctors, and Jair Bolsonaro at the start of his term kicked out the Cuban doctors. Bolsonaro is also mocking mask wearing. He is promoting privatization and ignoring, as I said, in general, the needs of Amazonia. So if you look at the hashtag SOS Acre, ACRE, SOS ACRE on Twitter, you can find a lot of different mutual aid organizations and NGOs that are currently trying to provide support for the folks over there. You can also look for Brigada Autonomia, which is any Brigada Autonomia. They're mainly indigenous land defenders and anti-fascists working in Brazil to fight fires, fight illegal deforestation, and to provide frontline community support. So look for Brigada Autonomia, BRIGADAAUTOMIA. And you can look for those brigadas on Facebook and consider giving them some money to help them because the government in Brazil is currently not doing nearly enough to support the people in Acre or in Amazonia in general. So this kind of mentioning of the COVID vaccination effort around the world brings me to the Chinese Sinopharm vaccine, which is being deployed in Bolivia and Colombia. They are shipping 1 million doses to Africa every week. India has a 49-country vaccine friendship program, so the US and Europe have both kind of applied this, like, our country first to the vaccination program. The United States and Europe are trying to catch up with that. They have a COVAX facility, which is going to be increasing production. It's allocated 337 million doses to 130 countries. Although you may notice 337 million doses is not like a ton relative to the overall world population, which is like 6 billion people. I also just got notice that the Soviet music that I played at the end of my last thing was a little bit too loud. So in the next broadcast, the Soviet music will be a little less intense. Let's make sure that happens. So yeah, that's essentially what I have in international and domestic news for you today. In terms of what the Mutual Aid Union is up to, we have our regularly scheduled food and clothing and winter supply distribution at Dorchester Park, Saturday, 12:45 p.m. If you want to donate, I will have a link to our Venmo in the description. I'll also have a link to our Cash App. It's going to be Dorchester Park in Colorado Springs. Please show up and help. Get to know folks, build solidarity with the community. And if you have any information about where folks are located that have been displaced by the recent police sweeps, please contact csmutualaidunion@gmail.com. So with all of that said, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much. Bye.